Hey Grantham, I can talk like Batman and have a bat cave now too.
Nice. Pretty cool.
Yeah. Tonight we're talking about the Beretta 92G Elite LTT with RDO slide. Are you ready? Stand by.
And welcome back to the Humble Marksman channel. I'm David and I'll be your guide in pursuit of practical pistol proficiency. Tonight we're talking about a very special gun. It is the Beretta 92G Elite LTT with RDO slide. That is a very long name, so I'm just going to affectionately refer to it as the Rodeo. I'm not much for alphabet soup names, but it seems to be working for the luxury German autos, so why not? So the Beretta is a platform I feel like a lot of newer gun guys, myself included, millennials, Gen Z, has kind of ignored, and that's probably due to the fact that Beretta was pretty lazy and didn't make the products people wanted until they lost the military contracts. But now that those are gone, they're starting to do some interesting things. Now, I'm going to expand on that when we get to the shooting portion of the review as to why I think you should go to the range and rent a 92. But we'll get to that later. Now, the Rodeo is the brainchild of Ernest Langdon, and for those of you who are unfamiliar, Ernest Langdon is a Marine and competitive shooter who holds about 10 national titles, so he's really able to take the tactical and merge it with the practical, and that's kind of what this pistol represents. I normally like to define the criteria we're judging the gun against, like, is this a competition gun? Is this a home defense gun, concealed carry? And then that kind of informs what we're going to talk about. But because this has an aluminum frame and a somewhat shorter grip, it kind of fits all those roles. So I know that you're not supposed to have a do-all pistol, and I've given that advice plenty of times, but this thing actually comes pretty close to being a true do-all pistol. And to the point with that sort of do-all type pistol, the Rodeo has backup irons right on the gun out of the box. So it truly can bridge the gap between the practical and the tactical and sort of everything in between. So it's worth pausing for a moment just to speak to the censors at YouTube. YouTube, this is a gun from a gunsmith. It came exactly this way out of the box and is unmodified. So if you want a baller gun right out of the box, you can have this shipped to your FFL as you see it before you. So in this review, I actually put over 2,000 rounds on the gun, which is a lot for a typical gun review. And that's because I've enjoyed shooting the pistol so much, I've decided to adopt it for competition. So it's been subjected to my typical USPSA training regimen, and it has stood up beautifully. In 2,000 rounds, I haven't cleaned it once, and it is running like a top. And of course, it's been cleaned since then. I shot 2,000 rounds in about 3 weeks, so calm down, it's been fine. If you're interested to see how the pistol performs in competition, subscribe to the channel and come back and check us out, and we'll have more rodeo-centric content later in the future. And if you're with me so far, go ahead and hit that like button, guys. I promise I'll try and earn it. So the format for these types of reviews, I've actually got the timestamps down in the description. You can check out and skip to the parts that interest you. But first we talk about the things I don't like, then we move on to the frame and the grips, the trigger, the controls, the slide and the sights, the shooting experience, the aftermarket, and final impressions. So if you want to jump around, check out the description and let's get started. So a lot of my criticism of this is actually a criticism of the Beretta 92 platform, not necessarily this variant of it. But no gun is perfect, so I'm going to share with you the things that I had issues with. But please keep in mind before you lambast me in the comments that this is going to be a glowingly positive review, but there are some things that you should know about. So the very first thing, and all of the internet knows what this is going to be the slide ride decockers that hang out on either side of the gun. If you come from other platforms and are used to building like high thumb grips like that, the decocker is going to beat up your thumb in a hurry. So you're going to have to adopt a lower hand positioning. If you put your thumb basically on the slide release, it's going to get your thumb out of the way. But if you're used to like riding the safety on CZs with your hand like that, you're going to have issues. So the next issue is going to come back to the grip length. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, the grip length is somewhere between like a compact and a full size. It's not quite a full size, and as a result, if you have size LXL gloves, you can see that my hand hangs off the bottom of the grip there. And if you're going to practice like speed reloads like we do in competition shooting, you're probably gonna bang up the palm of your hand as you make a couple misses. And once you get used to it, it's not so bad, but there is a learning curve, so be ready for that. But the grip length is not so short that you can't get all of your fingers on the gun. You can see my pinky is right there on the edge of it, but I can apply pressure through all of my fingers, so the grip is good to go. It's just a little short. The backup iron sights provide a great co-witness. However, they're a little bit tall. I wouldn't mind them being just a bit shorter, like lower 1/4 or 1/5 co-witness, and this is somewhere between about a lower 1/3. So I certainly could handle some lower iron sights, specifically when paired with the SRO. And staying on that topic is the sight kit. Now, it comes with screws that help mount the optic on the gun, and there are 2 different lengths of screws, which is awesome. However, it doesn't come with the Allen key that's required to tighten those screws down onto the gun. And the Allen key that you need to use is so fine that it's easy to twist if you try and apply too much pressure, and at least I haven't been able to locate a bit that will work on my torque wrench, so blue Loctite, please don't fail me now. Now, because the Beretta is a very high bore axis gun and the optic, while it is milled very low, still rides pretty high, that makes these co-witness sights a little tall. And since nobody in the history of shooting Berettas actually uses suppressor height sights, there's like no holsters out there that support suppressor height sights. Now, I've tried a few and I can confirm that the CompTac International will fit, the Filster Floodlight will fit, the Guga Rebus Neo GR will fit, but the Ghost Hybrid, which is made in Italy, will not accommodate the suppressor height sights. And that's really it for the negatives, guys, which really isn't that bad. Most of the things can be trained around or just minor nuisances at best. But before we go on with the show, we need to discuss the sacred relationship between content creator and you, the subscriber. I make world-class firearms videos, and you watch these videos here on YouTube for free. You reminisce on your love of dinosaurs as a child, and suddenly your History Channel watching morphs into a formal education. You successfully Jurassic Park some dinosaurs and genetically engineer them to have my logo on their eggshells, so that everyone who is fleeing in terror from hatching dinosaur eggs will know of the great work that we're doing here on the channel and these world-class firearms videos. But no, seriously, I really do need that like, so take care of that for me. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and hit the notification bell so that you'll never miss any of these world-class firearms videos. Be sure and check back every Tuesday and Friday. That's when I post my new videos, and I'll have something to keep you entertained. And if you're picking up what I'm putting down, please go ahead and follow the link in the description to my Patreon page, where you can get access to 3 to 5 blog posts per week for just a measly $1 a month. Just $1, guys. But you don't have to. That's fine too. Really, you do you. And before we get back to the show, now is a great time to comment on the Beretta 92. Have you spent any time on the range with a Beretta 92? If not, why not? And if you have, what were your thoughts? Sound off in the comments so others can hear what you've got to say. And back to the show. So talking about the frame and the grips. Out of the box, the grip is pretty strong out of the box. We discussed the shorter grip length. I'd prefer about another 1/8 to 1/4 inch would be top shelf. But we played the cards we're dealt, and even still, it's not so bad. The front strap and the back strap are from the 92A1, which has better checkering than traditional like 92 FS style pistols. And out of the box, it's going to come with G10 grips that are pretty aggressive. They're a thin profile so that you have excellent reach to the trigger, and that's a criticism of DASA guns in general, is smaller handed shooters can't reach the trigger, but that's not really a problem on this based on the thin grip. So you should be able to get a bunch of finger into the trigger, so smaller handed shooters can enjoy double action as well. The sculpt of the grip on all the LTT guns and the rodeo included is improved over the 92A1 frame, as the trigger guard has been recontoured specifically for this pistol, so it doesn't hit your knuckle quite the same way the other guns have. And to talk about the trigger shape is actually pretty great. The trigger blade itself is quite broad and provides a nice even surface to pull straight to the rear, which is useful for a double action style trigger. The double action on my gun is pulling just north of about 6 pounds, which is pretty strong for a double action, and it is absolutely amazing. It's completely linear. There is no stacking. You can stage this trigger if you want to do like a 2-stage pull, but you can roll through it as well, and it's totally suitable for that. And the single action is absolutely fantastic. Now, there is a lot of slack in the trigger in single action, but that is not necessarily a bad thing because you can prep the trigger in single action when you're taking more difficult shots to eke all of the accuracy out of the shot. So I actually kind of like having that slack there. But the wall is just super, super crisp and hard. And when it finally does release, there's barely any over travel. It's a really great single action trigger. And in order to help you understand kind of where this falls in the scheme of things versus other guns, I've come up with the super objective Humble Marksman trigger rating system. So since this has a double and a single action, it's going to be rated twice. And the double action on the Humble Marksman trigger rating system rates a full nod from Robert Redford. And the single action pull on the gun absolutely delights a company of mobile infantry.
They're doing their part. Are you?
Moving on from the trigger, we have to talk about the controls. There are basically 3 bits of controls we get to talk about. There is the decocker, the slide release, and the mag release. So the decocker is mounted on the slide and it is on both sides of the pistol. And this is a piece that had to be reprofiled in order to accommodate the electronic sight mounting system. But as such, it is highly functional. It will drop the hammer of your pistol safely, and it will not cause any safety related issues as far as accidentally engaging the safety on slide manipulation. So that's a good thing. The slide release is pretty much exactly where you'd want it. It's very much a Goldilocks size. It's not going to get in the way, and you're always going to be able to find it when you need it. And the mag catch is the same way. It is big enough to where you're not going to miss it, and it is small enough to not get in the way. I really like the shape of the mag catch that comes on the LTT guns. And that brings us up to the slide and the sights. So the slide on the Beretta 92 is the drop top of the semi-auto pistol world. It's based off the old Walther P38, so a big chunk of the barrel is exposed and it uses a falling locking block type of action. So the actual barrel does not tilt up as the slide cycles, which is cool. And the reason I bring all that up is because the slide to frame fit almost feels like a gunsmith fit as far as just the actual cycling of the gun as you cycle it by hand. It feels very smooth. It glides across the rails. It's just great. It feels like a very high quality pistol that would be like a gunsmith hand fit until you realize that the slide wiggles just like you'd expect of a production gun. It's just that the action, because of that falling locking block, is super, super smooth, and you can absolutely feel that on the range, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But the slide does have front cocking serrations that are on the lower end of useful. I like some more aggressive serrations there. It has the rear serrations, but due to the sight system, they're pretty much unreachable. So your sight can end up being a slide racker if you want to take the Aaron Cowan methodology, or you can just grab at sort of the high power cuts at the front of the muzzle to manipulate the slide as well. Yes, the barrel can get hot when you're shooting, but generally speaking, if you have a malfunction, it's going to be with a cold-ish barrel. It's not going to be 400 rounds deep. On up to the mounting plate. So since the Beretta has such a slim slide, and they added on a slim frame adapter that is dovetailed into the slide, the electronic sight ends up being very close down to the bore, and the rear sight for the backup irons is actually right there in the plate. So the front sight is also changed out and is appropriate height. The sights are perfectly zeroed for the 125 grain ammunition that I was shooting, so the sights are highly, highly usable. And the plate itself has 2 recoil bosses at the front to catch the optic, but it also has posts that extend up into the screw holes on the optic itself, so you have 4 points of contact with the optic, and the optic is very snugly fit up there, so it seems like a super solid system, and I don't anticipate any issues coming from it. None in 2,000 rounds so far. So shooting this gun, this is where all of us millennials and Gen Z guys are missing out, because the 92 is an absolute beast on the range. So while you may look at the gun and say, boy, that sure is a high bore axis, I bet it flips around a lot like a SIG. And you'd be wrong, because if you look at how the slide is actually designed, almost all of the weight of the slide is below the barrel. So what that ends up meaning is that all of the reciprocating mass on the slide is effectively in line with what you'd find on like a plastic striker fired gun. So the experience is very similar. And putting on the Mantis X10 Elite recoil meter, I found that the muzzle climb was to be roughly comparable to like my Glock 34s that I tend to compete with, which is really interesting considering just how high the bore axis is. And because it uses this locking block design, there's not that hitch when the action opens or closes when the hood of the barrel is forced into the slide to lock up or unlock. So the result is that it's just super smooth and super linear. They use a full stainless steel guide rod, which is a nice sort of premium feature for what you'd expect for a gun at this price point, and this sucker's not cheap. It starts at $14.95. So it's nice that they put together a true value offering with all of the small details addressed. And because the grip is so broad, it's roughly the size of a Glock across the back, although it feels slightly more rounded and contoured, it spreads the force out that you do take into your hand quite well. Because the slide is so light, there's honestly not a lot of flip and not a lot of recoil. And because of the way of the action and the way the slide is shaped, the gun honestly doesn't hit you in the hand as hard as some of the heavier competition style offerings that are dominating CO right now. That's probably tough to believe, and we'll have a video comparing it to a Shadow 2 that's set up for carry optics in the weeks to come. And since the frame is made out of aluminum, it has a quality gun feel. It feels like it's got that soul that all metal guns tend to have, but it's only a middleweight, so you can carry it at 32 ounces. And because it is a middleweight at 32 ounces unloaded, you absolutely could use this in a duty carry capacity or in competition. And because it's 32 ounces, it has enough mass that it is easy to stabilize for difficult shots on tight targets. However, it's light enough to swing around really fast, and it's got a very, very good balance. So when you combine all that and you take the aluminum frame, making it a middleweight gun, you put the interesting slide and action design on there, and an absolutely bonkers trigger, it's an absolute bullet hose, guys. I don't know how else to say it. Like, the gun is absolutely amazing, and I wouldn't be surprised if this does become popular in competition shooting, because it is still a great bargain to get into a double single gun. And that brings us to the aftermarket. Since Beretta M9A1s are popular, there are lots of holster options, but as I discussed earlier in the video, probably a lot of them aren't going to work due to the sight channel. So when you are holster shopping, you need to account for that front sight, because that's really going to cause issues with some holsters. However, all of the other aftermarket things are generally accounted for. You don't need sights because it comes with amazing sights that you're not going to need to change. You don't need anything to do with the trigger because the trigger is absolutely amazing. And the MechGar 18 rounders, of which it comes with 3, are readily available and relatively inexpensive. So what you end up getting is a super high quality pistol with not great support in the aftermarket, but it's so good it doesn't really need it. Except for the holsters, and that is annoying, and that's something we're going to have to grow through together, guys. And that's going to bring us to our final thoughts. The 92 is a pistol that's been ignored for years, and I'm not sure why. Shooting it, I was just like, this is great. I can't believe nobody put one of these in my hands sooner. The LTT guns, the rodeo included, are the Cadillacs of the 92 lineup. So if you want your bullet hose, they're your Huckleberry.
I'm your Huckleberry.
So it's pretty obvious that I really enjoyed this gun. Now, I bought this gun with my own money. It was not sent into the channel, and I really enjoyed it. Check back in a few months, and I'm sure I'll have a high round count update to see how it's been holding up. But so far, it's been nothing but an absolute sewing machine and a total joy on the range. So if you're with me still and you still haven't hit that like button, go ahead and take care of that before signing off. Be sure and subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, guys, I appreciate you, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care, guys.